Welcome into another episode of They've Got Now. I am really excited to be joined today by the head coach over at Harvard, Carrie Moore. Carrie, first and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm good, Mark. I'm good, man. Just in the thick of preseason grind, and it's a rainy day here today in Boston, so feel even better about being inside for practice later today. It's actually been beautiful here lately, so just enjoying the fall and kind of the free weekends until we don't have them anymore in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have no idea how it's like. I mean, we're like less than a month from the season now. I
Yeah,
was talking to somebody from K-State the other day. They have their first exhibition on the 30th. Like, it's just so fast. How
yeah.
how was this summer for you? Kind of going spring, summer into this because I feel like every season it just gets even more insane in the off season because it's not really an off season. But yeah,
Yeah.
how's that been on your end?
Well, the Ivy League is different than a lot of leagues, around the country in terms of we don't get summer access with our players, so not, they're not on campus, they're not taking classes, they're not here working out with us. So the summer, it can at times, I think, comes with some good amount of rest for us in the months of May and August, which may not feel as restful for some in this
Mhm.
business. But outside of that, we're doing a lot of recruiting, a lot of camps, really trying to bring people to Boston and to Cambridge. And really trying to extend ourselves in the community, and just kind of grow our connections, on and off campus, and in the greater Boston proper. And outside of that, just constant touches with our team, FaceTimes, calls, getting them here to work camps as much as we can, because that's a way that we can kind of get on court with them and just kind of see what they've been up to. And it was nice to have our first years come and work those camps that way, too, as well. So yeah, it's busy. It's a different kind of busy than I would say the school year is. But yeah, it was a great summer. It flew by though. I mean, I blinked twice and school was starting. So went by much faster than the previous 2 summers, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. Like, I know my schedule was insane, just kind of keeping up with everything in the W and going out to do some AAU stuff. But like looking at, I can't. It's different when you're actually, actually on the staff. But I wanted
Yeah.
to ask too, like you mentioned, in terms of doing kind of outreach stuff, having camps with local products. Like, obviously, there's a lot of really great basketball in the Northeast. Even just looking D1, like I think you guys are on the up and up doing great stuff at Harvard. Obviously, the whole Ivy League, but like, Melissa Graves
Yeah.
over at BU's doing awesome stuff. Northeastern's on the way up. Like, there's a lot of great basketball there. When you do, in terms of like getting tapped in with local scene, and also like, I mean, just talking frankly about like this is an Ivy League school, like making it feel like that's a place that people can have accessible to them. What does that look like, and how have you kind of built that over the years?
Yeah, I think it's, just really tapping into kind of the younger generation, within this Cambridge community and kind of, Boston community. I think the part of this job that I really love is like I can be my authentic self and really,
Mhm.
when we're talking about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think, I'm a prime example of that, just being me at this institution. And so when we're tapping into, different communities within, this area, I think it allows us to really touch and inspire, um, a different wave, generation, if you will, of young women basketball players, young girls, I guess, right now, but the future of college athletics. And I think, for us, it's just really being ourselves. And our staff is, brings great energy and loves getting out and about. And our players, I think, when we have the opportunity to take them along with us in season and get out to the Cambridge lab or work with Shooting Touch or invite different teams and things to practices and have autograph sessions after games. And I think any type of whether it's short or extended touch, is something that's going to be really meaningful, to kind of that younger generation.
I love that, and I think the big reason I wanted to ask that too is I feel like it's the things like that that a lot of people maybe don't necessarily think about in terms of the job of a head coach, right? Because so much of building up a program is being able to build up so many of the things that you don't necessarily see on court,
Yeah.
or in season. Especially, coming into this job, when did you like, what kind of set forth for you, like, that this was the place, like, that you really wanted to come to Harvard? Because I know, like, talking to anybody, I mean, you're one of the made a real name for yourself as one of the best recruiters in the business. Obviously,
Yeah.
tremendous job as a coach in general, but like,
Yeah.
so what made you feel like Harvard was the right place to kind of take that step?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because of the experiences that I've had being at, all high academic, high level basketball places as an assistant. I started my college career coaching wise at Princeton. And I think that just opened up a whole new world for me in terms of, what this holistic experience can look like. I went to a college prep high school. So I very much, at the root, at the core of me, really feel very comfortable in this type of environment. And I really value this, as a human and as a as a person, as a coach. This is the type of environment I think I thrive in, and I think in recruiting, you get to really connect with those that are like minded, and that really value the same things that I value. So I think there is some connection there. And I've been successful at all the places that I was at, as an assistant, mainly because um, you know, outside of my charming personality, I think that it's because of the brands of the places, right? It's Princeton, it's Creighton, it's North Carolina, it's Michigan, right? Like everyone's going to pick up the phone when I'm calling from those places because it's a great degree, and it's great basketball. So, and Harvard is no different. So I think just that brand and attaching myself to a place that has such a winning reputation. I'm surrounded by excellence no matter the sport. I mean, there's 42 sports here, which is astronomical. Did not know that before I got before I got here, but there's so many different head coaches that I can tap into that have either won an Ivy League championship or won a national championship or coached in the Olympics or coached the USA team, or there's just, I mean, you name it, somebody here has done it. And it's just been really inspiring to be here. And talking to Kathy Delany Smith, it was her 75th birthday the other day, and we were out spending time with her in Harvard Square. And I think just constantly getting her feedback on just her experiences and the things that she fought for and really paved the way for our program to be where it is today. I think are meaningful conversations for me to have. And I'm, just so excited about the future and what we can build here, because this place really attracts the nation's best. And I believe we can recruit the best players in the league, and we will win championships.
Yeah, I think part of what's really fun with that too, obviously can't get too much into it. Like, you guys are really doing a great job on the recruiting trail, which has been very fun to watch. Just in general, I wanted to ask on that part too, just like in recruiting, because obviously you've been at both Power Five and at high academic. Do you feel like there's a pretty big difference in it, or how does that change up your approach at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, recruiting is all about relationships.
Hmm.
So if you put in the time and you're authentic with who you are, like you don't try to be anything that you're not. I think this generation is very good at like identifying like just fake and
Yeah.
unauthentic, people. And so I try to really approach them, where I'm at. And if I'm watching Love Is Blind on, on what program is that
I
on?
think
Is
it's
that
on
on Netflix?
Netflix. Yeah.
On Netflix, yeah. If I'm watching Love Is Blind, I'm gonna tell them I'm watching Love Is Blind. If I'm, caught up in, Game of Thrones, watching it for the fourth straight time, like I'm gonna tell them that I'm, binging Game of Thrones. Like if they've got Homecoming, I'm gonna ask, who are you going with? What type of, what's your dress look like? Like what's your outfit, shaping up to be? So I think, beyond basketball, like how can we really get to know these kids? And I think I've just always just tried to approach it in a very genuine way. And I think that's been very respected. And I think it's, really transferred, really well to the recruits and also the parents, that I've had the pleasure of getting to know throughout all these, processes. So, yeah. And like I said, I think the brands that I've had a chance to work at just really amplify, what I'm doing. And luckily I don't really know what it's like to not associate myself with something that isn't incredibly well known. So, I don't take that for granted. But I try to extend my reach, if you will, because I do know that the places that I'm at, people want to know about. So, I can call the number one ranked recruit in the country, and I can call the 250th, and they're all going to pick up.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, no, that's definitely cool to have. I do have to ask though, best Game of Thrones character if you've gone through that many times.
yeah, of course. Come on now. Well, Arya, it's a running joke that I don't have kids, but when I do, that Arya will be. I mean, that will be the name of my child, if not, their middle
I
name.
love that.
I mean, she's just she's such a bad ass.
Yeah, she has a special arc. It's always Jamie for me. Jamie, except we'll
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah. Let it.
erase the last season. Pretend the last season's over. He's pretty great, but
Yeah. I
um,
feel you. He's likable. He's
yeah,
likable.
yeah. It takes time, but you get there.
Definitely.
You mentioned with having your relationship with Kathy Delany Smith. First off, I think that's awesome that you can continue to have that because that not everybody gets to have that.
Yeah.
But in terms of kind of taking over for a legend like that, somebody who literally built this program. Um, what is that like? Because obviously you want to put your own stamp on something, obviously, and redefine what Harvard basketball means, but also like, okay, this is the first team that took a 16 seed over a one, like doing all
Yeah.
this stuff, like like there's a lot in terms of kind of redefining what that means. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of approach that, and how has that maybe evolved over the years so far?
Yeah, I think, the cool thing about Kathy is like she's so humble and yet so like just so chill and doesn't like, she doesn't want the spotlight anymore. She's just like, Carrie, I just want to get into the games. Like, just give me a ticket. I'll hang out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, Kathy, you come to the game and you sit courtside where you should be sitting, right? Like, she's just such a goat. And I think the coolest thing that she shares with us is, just just the experiences that she's had with all of these legendary teams. And, there's so many banners, in our gym because of the championships that she's won. And it's just been really incredible to hear all of the different stories from her and all of the different alums that come back. And, they remember the game, right? They remember the championship game, and they tell me the last 2 minutes of, of what happened, or, up against Dartmouth, or, up against Yale or whatever. And I hit this shot to go up two with a minute 30 left, or whatever it may be. Like, it's just, this is this is what we're after, right? So the kids that we're recruiting and we're bringing in here, can we get them to a place to where they're winning at this level? So when they come back, they're telling these stories, to whatever whomever coach is here, and to their kids that they're bringing on campus. So I think it's just incredibly inspiring to hear from her. I mean, to have coached at a place longer than I've been alive. I mean, that's just like,
It's
you
pretty
know,
crazy.
yeah, I mean, I hope I can be just a quarter of the coach that she was able to be for so many. And just the impact that she has made on her players and how they speak so highly of her when she comes back or they come back. It's just really just a great reminder for me, to not take this opportunity for granted, in terms of what I'm doing and the position that I'm in here at Harvard.
No, definitely. And especially too, like you mentioned, in terms of bringing people in, when you are looking at like a recruit, because I think part of what you said, like with you can get pretty much anybody to pick up a phone. Um, but when you are looking to bring people to Harvard, what is obviously, I think everybody's different, of course, but like what
Yep.
is if you're looking at baseline, like this is who I'm looking to bring to Harvard, this is what we want in a player on and off the court.
Yeah, I think, that's a great question. We have 4 core values. Sorry, we call them our core 4,
Hmm.
which is unity, integrity, grit, and joy. And I think if we are out on the road or we're talking on the phone to potential student athletes, I think those are the 4 things that we're looking for. Like, are they a good person, right? Like, how do they treat their parents? How do they treat their teammates? How do they treat their coaches? How do they interact with folks that they're spending there every day with. We spend a lot of time with our team, with our,
Yeah.
we want to make sure we're bringing in, players that we enjoy spending time with. I think the grit piece is huge. Like, how are they displaying that? I think physically and mentally, on the floor. Those that are obviously scoring is, so it's part of the game, but I think who's doing the other things, right? Like the intangibles, the winning plays, who can we bring in that can really help us, in that regard? Because I think that's an area of growth, for our current team. And I think the joy piece is huge, right? Like who has a smile on their face, who's loving the game, who's loving just, the growth that they're making, who's loving the grind, right? Like it's such a grind. You have to be in the gym, you have to be working, constantly. And at the same time, you're at Harvard, right? So you're going to be challenged academically and, who's going to find the joy in that? I think, is that perspective, I think is really important. And, on top of that, I think the unity piece, again, just is, who can we bring here that is really going to not only help us on the floor, but who's going to help our culture and who's going to help us in the locker room and who's going to help us in huddles, when we're down 5 with 2.5 minutes to go and we need to go on a run. Like who's going to shift the momentum, outside of myself and our staff, to really be kind of that player led team that we want to be.
Mhm.
So kind of a long winded way of just saying, just looking for those that are winners on the floor, but winners off the floor more importantly.
No, for sure, and that makes a ton of sense too. I think like you need to have like you mentioned, that relationship with parents. I think is so underrated because even like I do a lot of stuff in the background with like looking at with the draft and looking at development. And I think so much of getting to the next level is, and not even that's what we're talking about. I think, but even with going from high school to college, I think that matters, right? Like everybody's not going to be a star at the next level. Like, how are you going to handle that role change? Are you going to be okay with it? Is that something you want to do? And obviously, you want to keep growing and get to a higher level, but like, are you comfortable coming in and being able to be in that smaller spot first and kind of find your way from outside that? And like,
Right.
yeah, building those relationships and also having that self awareness is really difficult to find. And well, I shouldn't say difficult to find, but I think like there has to be that, that level. And I think that's probably the most underrated part of recruiting that I think some people will be surprised how little that I mean, not how little. There are some programs that do struggle with that a little bit, that's not
Yeah,
just talent. There's a lot more than that. So
for
I
sure.
appreciate that for sure.
Yeah.
But especially in looking at, this is now going to be year 3. Um, how and looking at core values, how have those like changed and evolved at all, or like how have things shifted for you the most in kind of the first 2 years here?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's a great question. I think our core four will stay the same, continue to stay the same. I think we're on a journey to really, being great at all four of those areas. I
mhm,
don't think we're quite there yet, but I think we're well on our way, and I'm just excited to see, how we can really, hit each mark, this current year with the team that we have. I think the first 2 seasons I've learned that, no season will be the same, or no season will honestly be what you think it will be, right? Like year one, I didn't know what to expect, and it was a very successful year, and I was
mhm,
just trying to stay above water half the time. And here we go, making it to the Ivy Tournament championship game, and you know elite eight of or grade eight of the NIT, and making the furthest run that any team at Harvard has ever made, right? Like so there's a lot of history that was made in that first year that I think, really turned some heads, but also, put some expectations on the team to come after that. And then I went in last year thinking we were going to be pretty good, and I think we were pretty average compared to, kind of the expectations that we put on ourselves towards the beginning of the year. So I think we learned a lot from last year, and I learned a lot as a coach, and our staff learned a lot. And I think the level of expectation and the standard has been raised because of the lessons that we learned. And I think we're standing on business, as the young folks will say, and just really inspired to have a great season and really be about the process. I think we can get caught up so many times of or so often of just thinking so far ahead and thinking about the outcome, especially if things haven't been done here in so long, right? It's like we just want to win, we want to win the first Ivy championship in so long, and it's like, yeah, but what does it take along the way to really accomplish those things? And I think we've really we've really slowed ourselves down, and kind of been more about the not kind of we've been more about the process, which I hope will really help us, come March, come the end of the season.
I love hearing that, but I want to ask, like, how do you reinforce that? Because I think that's something I just know for myself. Like, I always try and like preach being about the process, but like, I know like it can be really tough sometimes if okay, if you're not seeing the result immediately, or like with what happened with you guys having a significant injury,
Yeah,
mid-season, like that it changes things. So
right.
how do you kind of roll with that and work to kind of find like how you still have the process with while also recognizing like things change and there are highs and lows with it?
Definitely. I think you don't know what you don't know. I tell our first years that all the time, right? Because their heads are constantly spinning with what we're throwing at them in practice. And I think as a coach too, it's like, you know, I don't know what I don't know. And I think, last year that was the first time that I've been a leader in that regard where you think it's gonna go this way, and then all of a sudden, something happens and now you're going down a different path than what you thought you would, and you have to essentially reinvent yourselves. You've got to shift the way that you play. You've got to bring some others along that weren't playing that now need to play a lot. And there was just a lot of adversity, and I think we really learned about adversity response. And I don't think you know how to respond until you've gone through something like that. And so I think you know, a little bit more well equipped, as a leader, as a head coach. I think as a team we are, because we were still just so caught up last year. We good player goes down, we lose a couple games. It's like we're losing too much. We just want to win. But it's like okay, understanding kind of where we're at now. And how we can be the best version of ourselves in that particular moment, as opposed to always worrying about, the scoreboard and the ultimate outcome. So, yeah, it's just going to take practice, and hopefully we don't get too much adverse practice this year.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can get a little luck on our side, but yeah, I think I'm growing and I'm learning. Our team is also doing the same, as we go.
Yeah, off that too, mentioning like just gaining experience. Having a freshman class of five, how is obviously all players to be very excited about, but like
Yeah,
what has that been like? Because I believe this is your biggest freshman class you've had since you've been here.
yeah,
So like what has that been like kind of getting used to that? Obviously, you have the on the flip side, only losing one senior is
yeah,
nice. Obviously
yeah,
hard to lose Lola because she was phenomenal.
yeah.
But what has that process been like of kind of watching them come along, obviously early on, but both from you as a coach and also kind of seeing how having it be a player-led thing, and seeing how they're coming together.
For sure. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I love about these 5 is that, it just the type of people that they are, right? Like, I can blow my whistle every 30 seconds and correct and coach and, do what I wanna do and practice with them, and they'll look me in the eye and they'll say, "Yes, coach, I got you." Like, they'll give it that next rep, everything that they've got, and there's no defeat in them. Like, they're here for a reason. We wanted them here for a reason. They want to be here for a reason, and I think, that relationship that I developed with all 5 of them in the recruiting process is really helping me coach them. We talk about love and toughness, as a staff a lot with in the recruiting process. Just I'm gonna love you, love on you in so many ways, and but I'm gonna be incredibly tough on you as well. And I think this is the first class that you can really see just that dynamic, really take place because yeah, they'll go through a 2-hour practice, and then, they'll be marching up here to my office and laughing and dancing and joking and, just not taking themselves too seriously and not taking, what happened in practice overly seriously either. They're able to kind of compartmentalize in that way that I think is really cool and very healthy, especially at a place like this, at Harvard. So
Yeah, no, exactly. Because that's something I was so bad at as an athlete. Like you have to be able to put that aside, otherwise it's gonna plague you the rest of your day. And like
totally.
you can't have that happen at Harvard. You might be
Yeah.
able to get away with it in some
Yeah.
other schools, but if you have a Harvard course load, RIP, bro. But
Yeah.
um, I wanted to ask too, in terms of one of the things I really like, I love how you schedule non-conference. And
Yeah.
I always try and reinforce people too, because I did bracketology for the athletic this last year. And like so much of why I don't like seeing schools who are outside of power conferences get penalized for strength of schedule because so much of it is not up to them. So I wanted to ask how you approach scheduling a non-conference because I think you've done a really good job with it. Obviously, Indiana coming up,
Yeah.
St. John's, Rhode Island, Maine, like great non-con slate. But
Yeah.
it's hard because people know you have a good program. People know you're
Yeah,
a good coach. It doesn't, quote unquote, in some ways benefit them to play you because if we lose, that
right,
hurts us. So,
right.
what is the difficulty like in kind of putting up a non-conference schedule that is, helps get you guys prepared, gives you those opportunities to keep getting better? Because I think that's just something that tends to go underrated with looking at, putting together a schedule that isn't at the power level yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, right? I think scheduling is probably it was something I never did as an assistant, and then
Yeah.
when I started doing it as a head coach, I was like, "Wow, I'm so glad I never did this as an assistant," because it's just I mean, it's so stressful and it's just, honestly annoying at times, especially, being in the situation that we're in, similar to what you just said of, you know, P4s don't wanna play us, and not all P4s, don't get me wrong, like,
Yeah.
the ones that, don't want to lose to a Harvard are probably not going to put themselves in a position to take the game. Or if they do take the game, it's at their place. It's they're not willing to come to our place and play, a really cool game in Levites that will be sold out and be in front of 2,000 fans that are on top of you. So I think we're missing some cool opportunities to play certain folks here in Boston, but that's just those are the cards that we've been dealt, and so we'll then go after those games. We'll go and get guarantee money and play, at Indiana or at Michigan and those things. We'll go to Northwestern. We're not going to run away from the competition. If anything, we want to challenge ourselves and put ourselves in a position to get some really good wins in the non-conference and really prepare ourselves for how competitive our conference season will be. So
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because the Ivy is just it's such a grind. And I think
yeah,
it got lost last year because like obviously, like, don't get me wrong, like Princeton and Columbia are incredible.
yeah,
You guys were very good last year, but I think the rest of the Ivy gets underlooked sometimes. Like I just remember watching teams have to play Brown last year, especially
yeah,
in non-con heading. I was like, I just that's not a team I want to
yeah,
play against or scout for because that's just a disgusting defense to have to play against. Kyla Jones was so good. They're a really
yeah,
good team last year, but like up and down. Like I think you can look across the Ivy with that, and it's a ton of different styles as well. Um, so it's just tough. Like it's not an easy conference to come in and try and compete with. But I think part of what's fun with you guys, like, um, I feel like there's a really exciting window this year for you guys as a group
yeah,
because obviously Princeton's great senior class is graduated and you guys were very competitive with them this past year. Same thing with Columbia. I think there's obviously everybody's going to still be competing, but I think when you look at how everything's coming together, like really exciting opportunity for you guys to kind of take that step forward this year.
yeah, definitely. I no pressure or anything, but
Yeah,
we talk about it all the time since honestly since our season ended last year, knowing what this year was going to bring and who we were bringing back, who we were bringing in, what other teams were losing, and so I think what I'm trying to do with our current group is not to get caught up in those
for
expectations
sure.
or those thoughts or what other teams are doing or what they've lost or what they're bringing in, and more so just concerned about us and really just making sure we're getting better every day. 1% is what we talk about every single day, and if we can do that and if we can stay true to our own process and make sure that we're the best version of ourselves and that we talk about three C's, be coachable, compete, and relentless communication. If we can do those things, I think we'll be in really good shape. But yes, we're very excited about the season. But like I said, each year's gone completely different than what I thought it would. So not trying to put any expectation, but knowing that we want to be at our best, against every opponent in our league this season.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, no, not to put undue expectations on. I just get excited.
No, no, no. It's
Especially too
it's
with
all
like,
good.
yeah, one of the
Sure, it's
players I
not the
wanted.
first time I'll be
Oh, I
be
can
asked
imagine.
that. So
One of the players I really wanted to ask you about because I just didn't really know a whole ton about her until this season, and then obviously going back through and watching stuff again before we talked. And somebody who I think after getting to really learn more about your core values, Sanaya Glenn really came on last year, in my opinion, especially going back and watching. Like, I love her defense. I
yeah,
think does so much as a stopper for you guys, and kind of just in general, like brings so much to the table.
for
Um,
sure.
What is her, kind of seeing her kind of continue to develop and become this level of player and what you're most excited about from her this year?
Yeah, I smiled as soon as you said her name because I really do. We were talking about it as a staff earlier today. Like, I think she's been awesome this year. Like, she had a really good summer. Her and her dad are texting me. She's in the gym in the morning before her internship, and they're getting after it. And I think she's just in a place of confidence. I think she's in a place of experience. I think she's attitude wise, I think she's as great as she's ever been. She's that joyful piece. She is joyful every day. She's taking it from, I think she's approaching every day from a place of gratitude, right? It's
Mhm.
like, I get to do this. I get to be with my teammates. I get to have this jersey on. I get to compete and I get to lead my team because she should. She's a junior and she's been at this, with me for 2 years now, and she's played a lot of minutes. And yeah, she's so versatile, so important to what we want to do defensively with her length, and just she just has a knack for the ball and where it's going and how to get her hands on it. And she's most often guarding the other team's best player for us. She's up in our press. She's doing a lot of things, that we need for her to do. But I think the growth at which you're seeing in practice is more so offensively, and just, her being able to kind of, take more ownership of what she's doing on that end of the ball. And I think she's doing a tremendous job so far.
I love hearing all that because
Yeah.
that parlays in exactly what I want to talk about. Like with looking at player development, do you feel like anything's kind of changed for you in how you look at player development now that being a head coach and as opposed to being an assistant, or has anything kind of like opened up more in your eyes and how you look at it or how you approach it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always top of mind. I think, as an assistant, you're out there and you're on the court, you're watching the film, you're getting a lot of that individual one-on-one time, which is what makes being an assistant so fun. And I think as a head coach, not really wanting to lose that. I think especially as a young kind of players coach that I feel like I am.
Yeah.
They tell me I am, so I'll keep going with that. But I think year one I was just so like, my head down, just trying to, again, just do a lot in that year. And didn't necessarily get out on the floor. Last year, didn't either. Just so much going on. And I think this year really kind of, you know, pulling back a little bit and just saying, hey, this is an area that I think, I can really connect with our players more. I can really help them grow their confidence. And then also just, I think simplify the messaging, if they're hearing it from me directly. So I say all that to say I'm on the floor actually with, a quarter of our team individually, in terms of positional, how we're separating them, between each coach on our staff. And it's top of mind for us all. I think when I hired our staff, it was, are you a good person? And do I want to be around you? And are you going to help our players get better? Was, the second thing that I was most concerned about. And it's our job to make sure that they're graduating a much different player than they came in as. And if we're not doing that, I have a huge problem with that.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of our time is spent on, individual work, small group work, film work. We're doing our individual development plan meetings with our players right now, prior to our first scrimmage next week. Just trying to make sure, we're all aligned in kind of areas that they need to improve in, and what they're doing well, and just kind of checking in on where they're at. So
Yeah, going off that, like again, because being a process-driven team, I think part of what is like sort of the double-edged sword in like player development is like it's getting those reps in every day and having those touch points,
for
but
sure.
also like again, it can get like easy to kind of get lost in like am I improving? Am I taking the step? Especially when like I don't know. I think one of the most important things I ever got, like, reinforced for me was, like, talking to Mike Neighbors at Arkansas about, when he was coaching Kelsey Plum, and he was like, "I think Kelsey made her biggest strides when she stopped trying to work on everything and started taking it one step at a time." But that's,
Yeah.
like, you know, it took me until, like, my mid-20s to get to a point where I felt good about that, right? And, like, so how do you kind of, um, help players recognize that they are getting better at what they're doing? Because I think that is something that players do struggle with at times is, being able to kinda see it from the same lens that a coach might.
Yeah, definitely. I think couple things. I think knowing what they do well, I think that's important so they can really focus on doing those things really well and being really confident in those areas and making sure they're doing those consistently for our team first. And then after that, okay, let's talk about, some specifics in terms of, areas of improvement. I think the next thing that we've tried to do, within our program is really give our players some measurables. We added an analytics, staff person to essentially give them things, from practice stats, shooting stats, green light shooting drills. Shout out to Mike Neighbors, you just said, with his green light stuff. But again, just making sure they're aware of, what their output it looks like, on a daily basis. So we're not just practicing and, just logging hours, but they're actually like getting live feedback and input on areas of growth, from those practices. Because film doesn't lie, stats don't lie, so as many measurables as we can give them, as many numbers as we can give them, I think, that allows you to kind of pinpoint certain, areas of improvement.
Yeah, I think the feedback piece is so important because if you don't get the feedback, like how am I supposed to, know? And not even just getting feedback, but like digestible feedback that you can like understand. Because I think having that level, and I think part of the good part of being being an Ivy, I think there's in general, at least from players I've been around and talked with, like I think there's more understanding sometimes with like looking at analytics or how to kind of approach stuff with that. So it's it's always just kind of a difference with that. Um, Last thing I want to close out on, because I just want to ask, because I mean, you have played, I mean, not played, coached and been around some of my favorite offensive minds and systems in the game. And I love what you guys have been doing. Like going back through like watching kind of the end of Ivy stuff, especially into the tournament, I was like, yeah, this offense is really just humming. And like, um, a lot of everybody kind of being able to make a decision, but also play
Yeah.
on and off the ball and just have that flow and cohesion. And, you can kind of see some of the principles mixed in from, being at Princeton with Courtney and obviously at UNC with Courtney too. And then being at, with Flan at Creighton, like, and obviously, your time with KBA, like there's just so much great stuff all mixed together. And I was wondering how you kind of, have deduced it down to get to where you're at, because I really like where it's at and where it's headed.
Yeah. I think I've been able to kind of pull from everybody that I've had the opportunity to coach under in terms of kind of where we're at offensively. And we've even, tweaked some things, heading into this year that I think a lot will allow us to kind of play with, a little bit more space, which I think will help us with our roster in areas of ways that we can be a little bit more efficient from the field. But yeah, I think I've just always been, especially at this level, right, the mid-major level, it's like trying to find a style that, benefits you and the players that you have, but also is hard to play against if you're trying to beat, certain teams in your league, but also can we get a P4, P5 win? Can we make a run in the NCAA tournament? And what are ways that we can really help ourselves in that way? So I think a lot of different styles, but I think 5 out, 4 around 1 is kind of which I spent 5 years at Creighton, so that was embedded in my head in that way, and nobody runs it better than Flan does. But I think the biggest thing I pulled from him is that allow your players to have some freedom, like teach them how to break it down in kind of small sided games, but really teach them how to play the game and then allow them to play the game. And I think even in our 2 years that we've been here, we haven't quite gotten to the overall freedom standpoint that I'd like us to get to this year with the experience that we have. So just really excited to kind of see, where that can grow. And yeah, how we can put it all together. We've got some international pieces on our team too, which is much different than a lot of the teams that I've been an assistant for. So I've really kind of grown to liking that kind of Euro style, kind of, like middle of the floor quarterback type position where you kind of point forward, play through, kind of point series type stuff, give and go, zoom action. I think that type of stuff has been really effective for us, and we'll continue to try to grow it as well, which we've seen has been very much, replicated at the pro level. You watch a lot of, you watch the Minnesota Lynx, you watch, the Aces, you watch any of the teams in the WNBA, and they're playing very similar to the themes in which we teach every day with our girls, which I think is pretty cool. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm very excited to see more of it. And then I guess okay, just one smaller question off that
yeah,
because I love what you mentioned in terms of playing, you know, technically like just in general smaller because you're at the mid-major level. What is the most key for you in getting the most out of screens without having a true big? Because I think like obviously people think so much of screens like, oh, you just gotta be bone crunching, you need as much separation as possible. And I think part of what's been really fun about the last couple of years is, like you mentioned, seeing the teams in the W that have really gotten to showcase like great guard screening. And great
yeah,
screening that isn't always, kind of what people think of it stereotypically. But I do think there's a tendency where we can see teams like, okay, if you don't really set a screen or you're not as fully active in getting the screen, it's just easy to switch it or say, cool, we don't really
right,
care that you're screening. So, like, what has been biggest in kind of reinforcing for you and for your players um, to make sure that their screens matter? Because I think like it's so easy to if you just go through the motion with the screen, it doesn't do anything. Um,
right.
but yeah,
Yeah. Also, another great one, Mark. I think as we talk through our screens, it's about I think you're trying to those are scoring screens as much as we talk about scoring cuts and scoring footwork and things like that. Those are scoring screens. You're either getting someone else open or you're putting yourself in a great position to score off of that screen. Sometimes that screen might take two people with you or with your teammate, and that leaves you wide open for a dive, or a cut to the rim off of that. So I think for us, it's also just a variety of screens too. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, sometimes you're getting 2 feet set and you're holding your screen, but also sometimes it can be a blur, it could be a ghost, or you're just getting us the mismatch that we want, right? If teams in our league especially are gonna switch a lot, right? So sometimes it's about like, "Hey, just bring your guy. I don't care what position you are. You could be a 2 guard, you could be our 5 player, but let's get this switch so then we can get, this mismatch on the ball and then spread out and then play out of it." So I think it's really just trying to grow the understanding and kind of the IQ of our players to know how, but also like when and why
yeah.
as well.
No, that's such a great point because, like, I think even like talking about the pro level, like talking to players on the Aces, like so much of what they do with screening is like it's not coach directive. Like it's like no, we just know how to play with each other, and
Right.
that's so hard to play against because okay, cool. If you have somebody who, if you just know personnel, which easier said than done because you're
Yep.
on an Ivy League course load, but like being on top of scout, being on top of that, like you can really just kind of destroy people with what you do in screening. Because I love what you said. Like there's just so much more to a screen than just having one or two types of ways to do it. So I love that, and I'm excited to see how that continues to play out this year because Harmony is just special with coming out of ball screens.
Yeah.
But
That she is.
yeah, we'll
We just
carry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's funny, every year we start, like, with just, like, spacing and cuts and, like, no ball screens, right?
Yeah.
And, she stands out because she's obviously a really talented scorer, but
Mhm.
at the second you put in some type of ball screen, she just completely separates herself from every other person on the floor, and we just did that last week, and it was the same exact way. I mean, she just immediately looks so much more dynamic and, has just an ability that everyone, just doesn't have, right? It's just
Yeah.
an innate thing where you can come off a ball screen and see every possibility and deliver it the way that it needs to be delivered. So, yeah, great player. Hoping it's her best year yet, and leads us ultimately to our best year in a really long time. So,
Yeah, her pacing coming out of screens is pretty special. Like, I know you guys ended up winning that game, but the game against Baylor, I think that's
yeah,
like some of the most trouble that anybody gave that team this year,
man,
and they were really solid, really tough defensively.
totally,
So yeah,
it's an awesome game.
I'm excited for it. But Carrie, I really appreciate your time. This was
Yeah,
fantastic. Very excited to watch you guys continue gelling this year and see what
thanks,
you
Mark.
guys do. To everyone listening, of course, keep up with all things Harvard women's basketball and Ivy League. Going to be a great season, and most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for listening.